got a little rush that made me think I was like, it was like Kaylyn 1, mental health 0. You know, like I felt this little like, you don't control me. I can do.
You felt like you were overcoming somehow the power of it.
Yeah, because
What the hell? What the hell? What the hell is up? Hi, and welcome to this new experimental podcast of mine. My name is Claire, and I'm here to ask the tough questions in life, such as, what the hell is up? With you? With me? With the world? With those crazy vegan YouTubers out there on the web? This podcast is a play for me to be more honest and to put something out there that might be an encouragement to others. I'm keen on honesty and authenticity, yet I have somewhat learned to hide. So I hope that each podcast episode will allow me to get more comfortable in sharing out about my journey. Topics which will be addressed include my journey of mental health struggles, self-esteem and self-worth, sexuality, and a whole slew of other potentially relevant tidbits of my story. Thanks so very much for tuning in to listen. Grab some coffee or tea and think of this as the coffee shop date of your dreams. Hello, welcome back to What the Hell is Up? You are tuning in to episode 8, and I am super stoked that you're listening. Right as I'm recording this, I'm having all of the hopes in my heart that I'm going to be able to continue this podcast. So I suppose if you're listening, then my mission to grab your attention was successful, and the podcast ensues. Whether that's to your joy or to your detriment, I'm not sure, but I assume if you're listening, then you're happy to be here, and I'm super happy that you're here to listen. So thank you so much, everybody, and I hope that you're doing so well. I hope that your holiday season has just been the coziest ever, that you've had time for food and people and just gentle reminders of how much you are loved and how much it's worth it to love the people around us. I hope that your holiday has been amazing and magical. So today's podcast is about voice, femininity, vulnerability, and expressing our own experiences. I've been wanting to discuss the empowerment that I've felt in finding my voice through this podcast. I also wanted to highlight a new friend of mine. So the first part of this podcast is when I'm highlighting a new friend of mine. I sat down with my friend Kaylyn Rogers over coffee and chatted with her about her expressing herself through music. Kaylyn is a singer-songwriter in Seattle who's using her platform of songwriting and performing to be vocal about her experiences, unpacking faith and struggling with mental health problems. Inspired by her dad, she started playing guitar and songwriting in her preteen years, and she used this as a means of loving her friends when they went through hard things. She mentioned in my chat with her that she felt like writing songs for people was the best way that she knew how to love her friends. In high school, her friends started bringing their stories to her to request that she bring them to life through a song. And for her, seeing somebody impacted by her music, seeing somebody find relevance in her music was a great success and just really important to her. Both the process of songwriting and sharing her songs with her world held healing power as she experienced anxiety herself. I deeply connected with her amazingly gorgeous EP called The Older Brother, and partially because of my own experiences of anxiety and thinking about issues of faith, but also just her lyrics and her tone and everything in this EP is so moving. So I'm going to be including part of The Older Brother at the end of our conversation, or maybe the beginning, I'm not sure. And I'm super blessed to bring you into the coffee shop chat that we had.
And I didn't really start writing about myself and about my own experiences until I started experiencing like crazy anxiety, which was in college and after college.
Yeah.
That like really took a turn for me, and I was like, all of a sudden I had new putty to play with, and it was so raw, and like I didn't have to infer about someone's experience because I just had it in front of me and in me. And that's when everything switched, and I kind of stopped writing relationship-focused songs, and it all became like rooted in sort of despair, like for lack of a better word, despair with like a hopeful twinge. So I just was writing about how I was feeling, how I hoped things would go, doubts, fears, all that kind of stuff. And then that all, up to now, kind of turned into The Older Brother.
And turned into what?
The Older Brother album.
Oh, The Older Brother. Okay.
Yeah.
I see. Wow, that's amazing. Did you recognize the power that kind of songwriting could have for you in like a kind of like a coping way? Or
I think I totally did, because there would be times like everybody who experiences anxiety experiences it in a different way, but there'd be times for me, one of the ways in which it shows up for me is I feel like I can't cope. Like I get into a place of conflict where it's like I actually don't have the tools to move forward. And that gets to be a really scary place, because then you're just stuck, and you're like, I don't have any way to make sense of things. And if I can't make sense of things, then how do I live? And songwriting at so many different occasions has been the one thing that made sense of things for me. So I would be at a point of like just utter despair or confusion or doubt or fear, and just start like writing about it. And I didn't start writing with the intent of solving my problems. It was more like, I don't have anything else to do with my body right now, so I'm gonna like do this thing that is natural and makes sense to me and helps me. Like I felt like I processed through problems by jumping into songwriting. So I would come to a song with an issue and then start hashing it out in a verse or in a chorus, and then put music to it and play it. And once I played it, it was all of a sudden like the fog is gone. Like I can see my situation now, and I feel like not only that, like not only the processing, but also just like the pure satisfaction that comes from turning something super shitty into something that someone could like enjoy listening to. Like it's a weird concept.
I mean, like, turning that pain into art is...
Yeah. It's like, and not to use like a super like I don't know, Christian-centric line, but like the beauty from ashes thing, like this, I've never experienced it anywhere else more than I do when like feeling like shit and then making something cool from it. And it doesn't necessarily mean that I walk away from the song not feeling like shit, but I feel like I've done something with my body.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Definitely. I mean, when I listened to your album, like, it really, really resonated with me.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Like, yeah, truly. And I definitely picked up on like mental health playing a role in maybe some of the songs.
Yeah, totally.
And yeah, it resonated with me because of like my own experience, kind of struggling with mild depression and anxiety as well. But I really feel that like raw like evocativeness from it, and so something has definitely come from those ashes that is like beautifully cathartic and relatable. And
oh, thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
It's the whole goal.
But I also felt like, I guess when I was listening, like just from my own place of kind of trying to create something from more difficult experiences and like finding my voice in that way, that like I'm curious, like, if it felt risky to do so, or if that felt like how you felt, I guess, like, kind of how you felt valid in, like, claiming your experience and expressing it through art, and noticing that it was, like, it mattered, and it was, like, something that was powerful because of, like, the difficult, I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. And that's a really good question. I think that was kind of a subconscious part of the experience that I haven't really ever looked back and, like, tried to pinpoint, like, at what point did I believe in myself enough to think this was okay to do, you know? And I think the switch, I don't know, I don't want to attribute it too much to this, but I definitely think part of the switch was, so I was writing in my bedroom, like, experiencing this rough thing and struggling with mental health, and just writing and writing and writing, and just, like, stacks of songs were coming from this time period. And I think when I started being more open about what I was writing with my partner, I think that may have been the first time I felt like, oh, this music might have a valid space outside of my bedroom.
Okay. Once you shared the songs with him.
Yeah, because he was kind of he was actually 100% the person closest to what I was experiencing, and the person I was most vulnerable with about, like, the darkest parts of what I was going through. And so I would tell him, like, hey, I put together a new song yesterday, and he would just jump at it and say, like, that's great, I want to hear it. And it was this, like, unconditional support and enthusiasm over what I was doing. And not that I need external, well, I don't even want to say that. I was going to say not that I need external validation to, create art, but I think I kind of needed that boost to believe that it was valid outside of my space, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, especially when it comes to, like, mental health focused, even just trains of thought. I feel like it's nice to have that person who can affirm that, like, your experience is something that matters.
Yeah, and I think the other part of that experience was that I was being more and more active on social media during that time, because I felt like I wanted to prove something to myself, that even though I was, like, scared all the time, I think I got some value from being vulnerable about that. Like, I got a little bit of, I don't know, like, some endorphins from, like, sharing something that was maybe taboo in my social circles.
Yeah.
So posting something that was like, hey, like, I've been scared all day, and I don't know if anyone else is feeling like that, but if you are, like, it's okay, or, like, reach out to me. And I would post something like that, and I think I got a little rush that made me think I was, like, it was like Kaylyn 1, mental health 0, like, I felt this little, like, you don't control me, I can do...
You felt like you were overcoming somehow the power of it. Yeah,
because I think also having, invested so much of my time in studying psychology in college and in high school, if there was one thing that I learned, it was that, like, solitude plus, mental health struggles usually doesn't ever lead to anything good.
Yeah.
And shame, obviously, has also been a big part of my experience.
And needing to, like, keep those things, like, bottled, or believing that you're lesser than because of them, or...
Totally, yeah. And so I think I got a lot of encouragement from going against that stigma of, like, talking about your mental health makes people think less of you, or, this or that. And I wanted to own at least one. I felt so out of control of my situation because most of my mental illness, I felt like, just was happening to me, and I didn't have control over what was going on. And so this gave me a bit of control to, like, kind of like a fuck you to like, the struggle, like, I needed to be able to say, like, no, like, yeah, you can throw this at me, but I'm just going to keep telling people about it. And, like, there's going to be other people out there who don't feel comfortable talking about it, and hopefully they'll see this and then feel like, okay, my space is valid.
Yeah.
So that also, going through that, like, publicly, in a way, also pushed me to think, like, well, if I'm talking about it in this way, why not put the music out there also?
So in a way, it could almost be like helpful for somebody who was grappling with the same sort of mental health struggles, or someone who is like kind of stigmatizing the experience and
Totally.
like avoidant of hearing about.
Yeah, that was the main motivation that got me to actually, so yeah, to answer that second part of your question, my partner helped me kind of come to the conclusion of this music should be released, because not to say that anyone who's making art has a responsibility to release it, because that's not, that's 100% your decision. I felt like it was my responsibility, to put it out there, just in the off chance, like some
That it could do something.
kid in Wisconsin who I have never met and will never meet might stumble upon it somehow on Bandcamp and be in the thick of it and like get a little something. If that happens, then that's worth it. Like
That's a
everything
success.
that we've done.
Yeah.
Totally.
Okay, that's
So that's what
really
pushed
neat.
the release. Yeah.
And when did you release that album?
So we started, we jumped into the doing music for real pool last year in the fall.
Okay.
Released our first single, which I really should know when we did that. I think it was like December, January, and then the second single came out in May, and then the album came out in June.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's just June, July, August, a couple months ago.
Yeah.
Feels like so long ago, but yeah. A couple of months ago was the first time the album dropped. And of course, I'm already jumping onto the next thing and trying to record the next thing.
Okay, that's exciting.
Working on being patient, but
Yeah.
it is hard.
Okay, that's really good. Well, I want to ask, and I know different people have different perspectives on how much a song should be explained versus how much the song should speak for itself.
Yes.
So I guess whatever you're
Yeah.
comfortable with that. But the older brother, the song "The Older Brother." Wait, is it "The Older Brother" or "Older Brother"?
Yeah, so the song is called Older Brother, the album is called The Older Brother. I thought that was cool, making the distinction between the album and the song. It doesn't really matter. It is
cool. It makes sense.
You can, either way, I don't know what you're talking about.
That song had me in tears more than once.
Oh, that's my sweet spot, yes.
More than once. And I think there's two aspects that really connected with me. There's the one, and I guess I'm just kind of curious what this meant to you. The part about, it's something you see him and you wonder if he...
What do I know about him?
Yeah.
That section?
Uh-huh.
What does he think about at night?
Yes.
And tell himself in the morning?
Exactly. Sorry, I got that completely wrong.
No,
but
that was the gist, yeah.
it felt like I could think of, honestly, specifically men in my life who I worry and wonder if they're never saying the struggle that it exists in my heart, that I would hope that they could communicate if they needed to. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that's kind of what it brought it to my heart, but I'm curious about what that...
So I like your caveat earlier about different artists approach explaining songs differently, because I do have this, I want what people hear, just because the reason I wrote it isn't what you got from it doesn't make your experience from the art invalid, I firmly believe that. I know that whenever I hear about an artist explaining a song differently, I'm like, oh man, I totally thought it was something else. But the reason that you write it this way is so that people can put themselves on it.
Okay.
So just that caveat of in case anybody got something different from that song, it's not invalid. That's exactly what it was about. What you just said, that's exactly how. So we decided to call the album The Older Brother because it was this concept of a person. I have a brother who's 3 years older than me and went to college while I was in high school and moved out, and he now lives down in Oregon, and so that was nothing like time and freeways to make you lose sight. That's kind of that reference of it's been a lot of time since we've lived in the same space, and we have different personalities, so it's different the way that we approach conversation. But I had this moment of crisis when I was writing the songs on the album that there are people in my life that I would die for who I just don't know what keeps them up at night. And that makes me so sad. Like, it's just, it's a weak point for me to put it out there.
That's beautiful.
On the one hand being, someone might need the music, but the other hand being like, I don't want anyone to have to wonder. Like, I just want, like, anyone that I know who, brushed up against me in the hall in high school, but we never talked, I would love for them to know, like, the darkest parts of me. I don't know why. Maybe that's, like, it might be masochistic.
It almost sounds like an act of generosity that you recognize kind of the longing you have to understand others. It's like you want to offer that because maybe you don't always get it from others.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's...
Yeah, I think I realized that, like, I have the ability and the comfort to, more or less, to reveal those parts of myself. So I might as well, like, put it all out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's, you got it spot on. That was the whole, that song was written with that in mind. The first half is a little, I consider Older Brother, the song, to be kind of in two halves. And the first half is very self-focused, and the second half is very, like, but there's bigger things going on, and there's people outside of myself that, like, I care about and worry about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully that answers your question.
It does. It totally does. And how... okay, I have two questions, I guess, to follow that. One, did your faith also play a role in some of the expression in that song too? Or, because the part about
praying to that,
this, and your prayers gather at the ceiling, but you'll be okay because someone sees you on your knees or something?
Yeah.
That part, like, seriously got me. Just, and did your grappling with faith play a role in some of that as well?
Yeah. So faith, like, in some way or another, is a factor in every song that I write, probably, and every song on that album, but especially that part. I was really struggling with doubt and, like, just didn't know what I believed and didn't feel a God, didn't feel, any spirituality being present in my situation, which I think is a common thing when people are struggling with mental health. It's hard to see, like, someone else's hand on it, when things are not going well.
And that can also lead to guilt too, that, like, I'm not doing enough spiritually, like, I should be okay.
Right, because I did have a number of people say, like, have you been praying enough? Like, I'd be like, here's my situation, and they're like, oh, like, have you been diving into your faith, or could this maybe be conviction, like, showing up? And that is such a harmful way to address spirituality and mental health. I'll just say that could be a whole other conversation. But so I was in the thick of that space, in the midst of struggling with, like, I don't know what I believe about who all is involved in what's going on here. So that line of, like, say your prayers at night, even if you think, like, they literally are not going anywhere important, like, they're just going out into the universe. It's kind of just an image of how just the act of sitting there and praying is, like, a hopeful, beautiful thing. And that shows up in a lot of ways. Meditation, like, people, like, I would even argue, like, getting coffee with a friend. It's like a form of prayer. Like, you're like pouring out, like, something hopeful and good into the world. And so I think that image was supposed to touch on that. It's like, even if you're just trying, like, your knees, on the floor, like, someone else is like, just that act is, like, a beneficial thing. So that image of someone walking by and seeing you. I really loved writing that. It was, like, one of the most fun things. Because I see it in my head. Like, I have a specific house in my head when I think about it. And, certain lighting, it's like dusk, like, I have this whole the way that image comes together. I love making pictures for people when I write.
That's beautiful. I mean, I had a feeling and a mood that it conjured for me when I listened. So
So glad.
that's amazing. But I'm also curious about how, I don't know if you've ever thought about this. I imagine maybe so or maybe not in these words, but I guess I've been thinking about the way that sometimes my choice to like be more vulnerable or put something out there that no one else is sharing has maybe also been that like idea of rebellion, because it is sometimes like considered kind of a more feminine thing, or being honest about my emotions and like being forthright about my emotional state is something that I think my femininity, I'm learning the way that my femininity has, like, is not a weakness, but actually has, like, given me a bit more access to those emotions and being raw about those emotions, when I've seen sometimes men have more difficulty being able to do so just because of, like, patriarchy and the way that society is, and
gender roles.
Yeah.
Totally.
And so I guess I was curious about how if you thought about like the way that your emotional experience has coincided with your femininity, or like finding a voice in that way.
Yeah, I think it always felt, and I'll say I'm, a very avid feminist. Like, that's a big part of my identity and a big part of my journey. So I'm always very present of how I'm being perceived as a woman, and even when I was growing up, like, I was a tomboy, not necessarily because I thought, like, cargo shorts flattered me, but because I felt like I would have more validity in spaces if I was more masculine, even though I 100% identify as a female, a cis female. So that's always, less and less now I feel more confident being able to express my femininity and not be invalidated in a lot of spaces. And I think I feel that way with music because there is femininity in being expressive about your emotions. And although that can sometimes, sexism in the music world is very present.
Absolutely.
It's crazy. There's so many different things that are at play. It can be rough. And so even though there is that fear of like being discounted for being more emotional, which is something that like women encounter all the time, I think I saw such a strength in myself for doing it that I didn't really care if somebody was discounting me for this, because I felt like if you are, you're just wrong. Like,
true.
Like, if you see something in this that makes my opinion less valid or my taking up space less valid, then you have your own work to do, and that's not my job or my problem.
Yeah.
So I just felt so, I think I felt even more reinforced by actually sharing the music than just like writing it and keeping it to myself, because that felt like such a brave thing for me to do.
Yeah.
That it was like, it felt so brave to me that I didn't need anybody else's affirmation to say that, like, what you're doing is a strong thing. I was like, I know. Like, I know that.
Well, the fact that you're, like, speaking from your experience and expressing emotion, I think, is, like, oddly a bold statement in a world that doesn't always value that expression. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why I bring up, like, femininity playing a role in that, because I feel like your album, like, highlights the value of that, like feminine power to be emotionally raw and compel someone emotionally. Mm-hmm. When sometimes that's not valued, your album speaks to the art of that.
Totally.
And the, like, capability of your experience as a woman, I think.
Yeah, because I think we too often associate emotional competence with incompetence in other areas. Like, like the fact that like, I don't know, there's still people who think like hormones will inhibit a woman's ability to be president, you know, like that, like emotional competence is not correlated with incompetence as a leader, as a speaker. And I think, projects like this, I hope, are just reinforcing that idea, breaking down that misconception that there is some correlation, some negative correlation.
Yeah, and the fact that I think your self-awareness too speaks volumes about even like people who struggle with these things like are strong, and it's a strength to like notice and do something with that.
Totally, and that's across genders.
Yeah.
But I hope that there are men out there who can listen to this and be like, I identify with this experience and I'm not threatened by that fact. You know?
Yeah.
That's what I love.
Well, I don't know. I hope it doesn't sound like I'm saying that like it only appeals to women, but I think
no, not at all. Yeah.
I think men definitely could be compelled by the experiences as well, but the way that society has kind of treated it as something more womanly. Yeah. I guess.
And femininity, and like there are parts of my personhood that's I identify with like masculinity, you know, like that I hold both of those in hand, even as identifying as a cis female. So I take it as, I hope that this project is empowering for women, but I hope that it can be well received by men as well.
Yeah. Well, I think the more art that could do what yours does would only make people feel like more allowed to experience a breadth of emotions and be okay with that. Like,
yeah.
I think that's amazing.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. I actually wrote in my notebook, the older brother speaks to this fear that I have that everyone might silently suffer in the same way that I sometimes feel like I do. And I feel like that's kind of what you spoke on.
I love that you said that. That made me feel so good.
Yeah. Well, as you like go forward, like what are you hoping for the older brother to keep doing? And then like also, is your new project going to be related in some way, or I'm sure it's...
Yeah. So I hope people can keep listening to the older brother, and like I hope it can morph into what they need at the time and be a home for people. The new project is similar style. It's going to be mostly electric, but my partner and I, Kaylyn Rogers, are messing around with just like different sonic elements.
Oh, fun.
So yeah, I would say the next project is going to be a little more like anxiety specific focused.
Okay.
That's what I'll say for now. Yeah, I'm really excited we've got some demos that I just like eek over. Like they're going to be fun. We've picked sounds that more suit the theme of the next project, so
that's really
feels
exciting.
Appropriate. Yeah.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
That's
well,
awesome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing about that. This has been Kaylyn Rogers talking about her newest album, and I really appreciate you talking with me about that, so thank you.
Anytime.
What do you know about him? What does he think about at night? And tell himself in the morning to make living feel alright. What do you know about him? What does he think about at night? And tell himself in the morning sight. But even love on its best day is just a fluorescent light, and you're gonna be alright. You're gonna be alright. You're gonna be alright. You're gonna be alright. If you say your prayers at night, though you're sure they gather at the ceiling, you will be alright. Someone walking by will see you kneeling and know, they'll know. You're trying